Ms. Banda has already recognized all the other members, and I, for the interest of time, I will say all protocols observed. It is our pleasure as AMH to welcome you to this meeting where we take stock and we discuss the state of our industry. I think it's common knowledge that over the last couple of years or decades, we have seen some element of deindustrialization in our country. But we now have a vision for 2030 for the country, and I think it's befitting that as we reset our clocks and our strategies, we also set the key thing, which is setting the industry. And that's why we, as members of the media, our key information, and what you will have is actually this line. And what will actually happen is you will see that there are probably 100, 200 of us in the room, but the global audience will reach as much as 10,000. So we are speaking not only to the people in the room, but to the world, and we appreciate the opportunity that the ministry has given us. As a country, I think it's really time we start moving out of potential into reality. I think for the last 10, 15, 20 years, all Zimbabwe, when they gather, we discuss the potential we have, the education we have. Meanwhile, all the stats are pointing in the wrong direction. So I do think it's meetings such as this, and especially the follow-up work that follows meetings such as this, that should make sure that we can recognize and realize that potential within our lifetimes. A lot of the problems we have, I think, emanate from everyone trying to eat not only their biscuit, but their neighbor's biscuit as well. But what you don't realize in the meantime is the biscuits you are actually eating belong to your children and your grandchildren. If we mess up the system, if we mess up the country, if we mess up the earth, the people we are actually stealing from are those who come after us. I think we owe it to future generations to make sure that we leave this place, we leave this country better off than we found it. And then looking around the room, I think the education we all got generally from people in the room is a demonstration that those who came before us left something for us. So I look forward to this meeting, Honorable Minister, that we can engage, and I know he was insisting that he wants to talk this much and listen more and exchange ideas. So we are looking forward to knowledgeable colleagues like my friend Gagare, who are having their finger on pulse to assist us. I also see in the room the chairman of the round table, Mr. Bina, and we welcome and thank you also for coming through alongside all the other salutations. So it's my singular pleasure to welcome you and ask that you enjoy the day. And be open. After time we come together and we pretend we are enjoying it and we don't tell each other the truth. But I think when you look back in your life, it's those people who were telling you very uncomfortable things that actually build you up. So let's be open, let's be truthful, and let's really contribute so that we can take this country from where it is to the middle kind of state that is the source of the vision that we have. With those few words, allow me to then ask the MC of the day, Mr. Banda, to come and take over the. Welcome again, gentlemen. Enjoy the morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yes. We are going to be finalizing our protocol. With the other people who are going to be recognizing here, we have not overlooked anyone, but that's going to be happening soon. But at this stage, the ministry, together with its partners, has prepared a 5-minute video which should tell us what the industrial development program for the next 3 to 4 years should look like. So at this stage, I'm going to ask those who are doing our media to beam it up for us before we call for the next person who's going to be at this master.
Advances way of life. Thus was born industry. The world has become far more advanced than the classical world as humankind further seeks to advance its way of life. In the middle of the chaos of modernization is a continent called Africa, home to an array of resources tucked within its belly and surface. Africa has a large quantity of natural resources that include almost everything that drives industrialization, yet it remains the poorest of all the continents. In 2015, Africa's leaders came together to craft an African voice for Africa to rise from its ashes with unity of purpose. Agenda 2063 was set. It was both a vision and an action plan to all segments of African society to build a prosperous Africa. Within Africa is a people called Zimbabwe who stand with pride and resilience. They too share this common vision. Zimbabwe has had its own share of challenges that have slowed down the momentum of economic growth. In a bid to recover from the setback, the country adopted the Industrial Development Policy in 2012, which was aimed at transforming Zimbabwe from a producer of primary goods into a producer of processed goods for both the local and export market. With the ushering in of the Second Republic, the nation seeks a rebound into the economic space, its eyes set on achieving a technologically advanced, competitive and diversified industry by 2030. Under the Transitional Stabilization Program, the Ministry of Industry and Commerce has crafted a policy strategy that is set to transform Zimbabwe's industrial sector. The Zimbabwe National Industrial Development Policy strategically aims at boosting manufacturing sector growth through development and strengthening of industrial value chains, agro-based industrialization and mineral value addition, backward and forward linkages with small to medium enterprises, creation of industrial parks and innovation hubs, and commercialization of intellectual property. To achieve this, government is committed to creating a conducive environment to facilitate local and foreign investment into the productive sector, enhancing industrial skills and training, facilitation of science and technology transfer through collaborations with development, learning and research partners, as well as providing fiscal incentives for manufacturers. The strategic objectives of the policy is to achieve a 3% growth rate per annum in the manufacturing sector, contributing towards attainment of a gross domestic savings rate of at least 30% of the GDP, a manufacturing value-added growth rate of 16% per year, merchandise growth rate of 10% per annum to orient the manufacturing sector towards exports and capital generation for a high savings rate, and increasing the manufacturing sector share of employment to 20% by 2023. The core focus of the policy is on industrial value chains targeting fertilizer manufacturing, potato processing, pharmaceuticals, soybean processing, cotton to textile, and product packaging. The policy further provides for the financing of SMEs and rural industrialization through group financing schemes such as credit unions and cooperatives. Focus will be on transformation of the Industrial Development Corporation of Zimbabwe, IDCZ, into a development finance institution through which the industrial sector can access funding. Apart from its alignment to the African Union's Agenda 2063, the Zimbabwe National Industrial Development Policy is also regionally aligned to SADC and COMESA industrialization strategies, the industrial upgrading and value chain integration, and the local transition stabilization programs. It is a dream we should all dream, a dream we should transform into reality, a dream for a prosperous Zimbabwe, and you are a part of it.
Thank you very much for the ministry to give us that. Let's keep some of the things we listened to now in mind for further discussion later. But at this stage, as we run with our program, allow me to call upon Dr. Spanda, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, to come and introduce our speaker.
gentlemen, I'm actually very pleased to see the audience here. Thank you very much. As the Minister of Industry and Commerce, Honorable Maurice Tam, Minister in the Office of the Vice President's Office, Honorable Dr. Evelyn Ndlovu, Deputy Minister for Industry and Commerce, Honorable Raj Modi, the Chairman of the Portfolio Committee for Industry and Commerce, Honorable Joshua Sako, other members of Parliament here present, senior government officials here present. I would also like to recognize the President of CZI, President of ZNCC, Bankers Association, Roundtable, all the presidents of different associations who are here. You are all very welcome, and I recognize you. I would like to recognize Mr. Elias Mafoketi and his team for the wonderful job he has done. We have collaborated, we worked together to see this event happen. Thank you very much, Mr. Mafoketi. Thank you. It is indeed my singular honor and privilege to welcome you all to this important gathering. Let me begin by expressing a sincere appreciation once again to our media holdings for partnering with us as we seek to rebuild, revitalize, and grow our economy through leveraging on our relationships for brighter tomorrow. The purpose of this meeting is to close ranks among the key stakeholders as the journey towards a new economy continues unabated. It is my sincere hope that this interactive platform will discuss pertinent issues, exchange ideas, and map up strategies that will enhance our business environment. A short roll call of the participants on this forum reflects that everybody who is here. Thank you all for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm taking this opportunity to introduce the guest of honor. Our guest of honor, I'm sure most of you already know him. I think he has been introduced several times. Our guest of honor is none other than Maurice Tam. He is a member of Parliament for Bulilima East constituency in Matabeleland South. And I would say he's one of our youngest ministers in Parliament, in this government. So he was given this ministry, which needs somebody who can run. At times I say it's good that His Excellency chose a young minister because there's a lot of work, there's a lot of sweating, there's a lot of running around. The Honorable Minister has passion, which colleagues here you can help him. He would like to see Zimbabwe re-industrialized. We are looking at the efforts of, we are putting efforts to resuscitate the ailing industries. We are looking for new investments from the local business people and also FDI. But you local will take precedent. We are looking at retooling as well as the industrialization of the districts. He says he would like to see Zimbabwe having
at least one district, one industry. Honorable Ndlovu is an open-minded, forward-thinking man who is willing to take advice, suggestions, recommendations in the fight towards meeting this goal of reindustrializing the economy. This is why we are gathered here, because he would love to listen to what you have to say. It is, once again, my single greatest honor to call upon my minister, Minister Nobizita Mangaliso Ndlovu, to address you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Spanda. I was going to say it's a lot because there were two ministers who were in office. Now Minister Chance has just stepped down. And I also realized that there is a Spanda conspiracy as well. A very good morning to you, distinguished guests. I have a long list here of salutations. I will do the unconventional one, and I'll observe the protocol. Suffice to say that we do have ministers in our midst. Honorable Minister Chasi, I was actually wondering now how I'm going to articulate issues of energy, which I am quite sure will be topical today. Thank you for coming. And it's on very short notice. I met him on a flight, was it on Friday? He had not received the invitation, but he immediately was coming. Thank you for coming. Minister Ndlovu of State in one of the Vice President Chiwenga's office, Deputy Minister Raj Modi, Honorable Sako, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Industry and Commerce. My brother Ken, thank you so much for the hard work. If I had time, I was going to share with the delegates here your passion for this country and for our economy. But I have a suggestion. I saw a clip where Professor Ndlovu was saying you'll need some assistance in communicating government programs. I think government needs that. And I have an idea just who can help us. There is a lot of work that I'm quite certain is happening in offices behind doors, but which we are not communicating efficiently. And it's important for Zimbabweans to know and appreciate the kind of work. Even the kind of work you colleagues are doing is probably not fully understood by Zimbabweans out there. So I believe we might need to have a national media strategy. And Ken, we might be having an edited job description there. Colleagues, today I'm supposed to discuss briefly about our policy. I hope everyone has received a copy. Those without, please feel free to indicate to our staff so that we all get a copy. But I'm not going to spend much time on that. It was highlighted by Ken that for me today is to give an opportunity to industry and commerce to get to appreciate the environment that we are all going through, the challenges that we've been facing, the progress that we are making, so that together we can chart a way forward for our nation, this great nation. Zimbabwe is a great nation. If you may kindly tell the next person that Zimbabwe is a great nation. Thank you. And I'm certain everyone agrees with me. We all agree. And I have no doubt that everyone in this room has what it takes to make Zimbabwe the greatest nation. So I'm going to briefly touch on the policies, the industrial development policy and our local project strategy, but also highlight briefly on the operating environment in the first half of the year, the second quarter. We had a brief review of our first quarter early April, but it was mainly the BMOs, the leadership, with CZI, with ZNCC, we had a CEO roundtable. I'm happy today that we really have a wider representation. I'm seeing big corporates, I'm seeing BMOs, I'm seeing also those from the energy sector, from financial services. In my view, this is a team that really can propel our industry to greater heights. I will be moving between slides and few notes that I have here. I don't think I'll be able to move this. Can someone get this? Okay, this is supposed to be my presentation outline. Starting with the overview of the manufacturing sector, which is really captured in the policy documents that we have. Not so much of the retail sector in the policy, but I'll briefly touch on it as well. Then the policy interventions and strategies. I will be picking a few of the issues that are contained in our industrial development policy. More importantly will be issues discussed on the way forward, which I believe matters most, and then on the conclusion. I wanted to check if Brains is around. Okay. Did he tell you that I specifically asked that to come here? I'll tell the delegation why I asked him to come. The first ever interview, which I'm told was broadcast throughout the world, where I had me in the panel with Brains there. And he did his utmost to give me a torrid time. So I said, I think I need him today. Thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, I am personally a strong believer of a private sector-led economic growth, where government's primary role is to continuously improve the operating environment, policy-wise, actually. And this we can best do working closely with the players in the private sector. As we look ahead towards the second half of 2019 and indeed towards the second half of our TSP, numerous economic stabilization measures have been put in place, and I believe it is now time for us here to play our part and move our nation on a growth trajectory that it deserves. It is also time for the manufacturing sector to have a more focused dialogue on the future of this critical sector, the need to ignite technological transformation, promote enduring partnerships, and inspire the next generation of leaders and innovators to create a roadmap towards global prosperity. This is a legacy we should all seek to create and pass on to the next generation. We make use mostly of the research done by our players in the private sector. We had a 2.5% projection in terms of the manufacturing sector growth, which has since been revised downwards to 1%, obviously because of a number of factors that have affected our sector. Chief among them, the droughts that we are experiencing, induced by El Nino. Also, we experienced Cyclone Idai. We have also encountered a number of challenges on the currency front, and more specifically from accessing the foreign currency, which we so much need for our raw materials and for retooling purposes. So because of that, we have had to revise our growth projections to just about 1%, which is why I have defended our 2% annual growth rate for the next 5 years of the sector, when others feel that we are not ambitious enough. 2017-2018, where I believe we did fairly well, we grew by just over 1.2%, I think by 1.3%. So realistically, if we have a target of 2% annual growth, and if we achieve that, I believe we would have done well, although there is always scope to outdo the 2% target. Again, I believe we can do better than the 1% projection, which we have had to revise down to. Oh, I left out challenges to do with energy, which I'm quite sure we have all been discussing. Quite a number of you colleagues have been raising concerns to that. And I have had to throw back the challenge to most of us here to say, how are we transforming this challenge into an opportunity? Also to say that if we play our part as the most affected sector, I must say, I believe there is so much we can gain out of it. The Minister was telling me he's here that the private sector is owing ZESA not less than $300 million. The country is owing our suppliers not more than 80 million now. This is how much we can contribute to get our country out of the challenges we have. I'll just take you through a few graphs. I indicated to my team that I don't want speeches disguised as slides. People relate better to slides like this, to statistics and graphs, and it's a simple task to try and explain them. The first one, I'm not sure if we are moving on the same pace. Okay. Capacity utilization. This is showing the trends over the last 5 years. And I must say, this is not an inspiring slide. As long as our capacity is less than 60%, it really shows that there are a number of inefficiencies we have. It means that we are perhaps apportioning a lot of our overheads into pricing, which makes our products less competitive. I look at this 2018, looks so far the highest when I'm looking at our last 5 years, which was still below 50%. And when we thought we were now on the trajectory to move towards 60%, 2019 has come. And this is just a projection which was done by CZI. I hope we will continue to do our studies, refine our projections. I still think we might not be far from 40%, but it's, we have to do our revisions, and I stand guided by also contributions from the private sector. This slide relates to investment approvals. I did not get to have my input on this because I don't believe it's a very useful slide. I have to apologize to my team. We always approve investments, but I think it is the actual investments that come to fruition that matter. But nonetheless, it is an indication again of confidence potential investors have in the country to make investment inquiries and also to go all the way to seek approval of their investments. So when I look at the comparisons between 2018 and the first quarter of 2019, I believe we have fared badly in the number of companies. 2018, we have 28 companies coming for approvals. The first quarter of 2019 it was 32, which to me is quite a positive indication. And in terms of value, 2018 it was 210 million, and in the first quarter of 2019, which, by the way, was quite a problematic quarter. We had about more than 50 million coming through. And well, we have the rest, employment and exports. Okay, well, these are some of the employment figures. I don't know whether it's saying these are employment, this is employment created or jobs that have been obtaining in the various sectors. But this tells you the employment intensive sectors. If you were to go through this, I think this is also including the farmers. I don't want to stand here longer than 15 minutes. Or am I fast approaching my 15 minutes? Okay, when it comes to the retail sector, again, this has been quite a challenging sector where we have experienced rapid price increases. I must say up to now we haven't really experienced acute shortages, problems here and there. Once in a while, especially bread people that are here, I've seen them. We've had to grapple with challenges with our wheat supply because we have not done well in our agriculture side. So we've had challenges in terms of pricing, and I'm really worried because aggregate demand has dropped sharply, owing mostly to high pricing, erosion of purchasing power for most of our citizens. We are monitoring 14 commodities. Mostly these are basic commodities, and they influence most of what we call our consumer basket. And all these products, when we look at the last quarter particularly, the prices have really soared high, and it is a worrying trend for our sector, for its growth, and also for the general population. When you look at the trend there in terms of our products, the period May to June, we are seeing sharp price increases, which were influenced mostly by the exchange rates, which were rising on an exponential rate, leading to government doing away with our multi-currency system. So these are just the trends which I'm quite certain we are well aware of. And year-on-year inflation has also remained quite high. I am also expecting that this will only stabilize after October because inflation began to spike round about October after the 1st October fiscal and monetary policy announcements. So we'll expect this to remain stubbornly high up until October thereabout. I move on, ladies and gentlemen, to the product availability and affordability in the retail sector. I did allude as I made my introductory remarks that we have really had quite a number of policy interventions, some well planned, mostly influenced by input from the private sector, some well planned as well, but abruptly implemented because that's what had to be done. When you are to make changes in currency-related issues, you don't give people time, particularly Zimbabweans. I am now convinced that Zimbabwe is really highly literate because we are all able to identify arbitrary positions an ordinary person on the street will do an economic analysis and take a position that you wouldn't expect. So we have had to take these policy measures, and believe you me, we do all this with a good heart, with every intention to improve the operating environment of our nation. And we continue to refine policies, because I always believe that regardless of the research you put behind any policy, its success is always a gamble, which is why it's important to continuously monitor, refine where need be, but above all, consistency is important. So, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to go through every word in that slide, but suffice to say that I have no doubt that a local currency is what we needed now, particularly for the purposes of improving our competitiveness as we venture into the export market. I'll talk briefly about the opportunities availed by the African Continental Free Trade Area in terms of exports. I believe this is the right time for this gathering to discuss how best to exploit opportunities that are coming through. Now I'll discuss briefly about the provisions that we have in our industrial development policy. We say it is export-led, investment-led, and innovation-led industrial trajectory. Export-led in the sense that as a country, our most resilient source of foreign currency earnings really are exports. And we have potential to grow our exports, particularly from value-added products. We still rely heavily on export of semi-processed agro-products, as well as our minerals, without really adding much value to them. So I believe that if we are to focus on our exports, we can derive more value. We say investment-led because our country has suffered over the past 2 decades from divestment and really lack of meaningful investment in our equipment, in technologies, and we believe that this is the time to focus on investment. And we say innovation-led because I believe in our capabilities as a nation to innovate our way to prosperity, to innovate our way to global competitiveness. So these 3 anchor our industrial development policy. And we came up with pillars, which pillars we believe when we judiciously focus on these, we will be able to exploit our competitive advantages. I'm not going to go through all the pillars. I don't think they are in my slides. But I'll just mention quite a few, and for specific reasons, if I may add. The first one is the pillar on value chain development and promotion. We believe that we need to adopt a value chain approach to our industrial development. Currently, we are facing challenges, mostly because we cannot procure raw materials timely and cost effectively. We have to import most of them. I believe it's quite important that we begin to backward integrate or support the primary production of our raw materials as a nation. We have the climate, we probably have the skills. We couldn't easily grow our raw materials locally, particularly from the agricultural side. And we believe that a value chain development is the best way to do so. So I hope we'll be able to continue with the programs that we have started in some sectors where most manufacturing entities are contracting farmers to supply them with raw materials. I'm also going to touch briefly on export-led industrialization. And in this, we want to anchor and take advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area. I know there is some bit of nervousness when it comes to this because we always look at our Zimbabwe as a protected entity. We have to discuss this at length. We will not have time today to do that. We are working on a specific session on the African Continental Free Trade Area, which we will be doing in the next 2 weeks' time permitting, together with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, where we are going to discuss at length provisions of the free trade area. It's likely to take effect, I think, 1st of July 2020, but we need to prepare ourselves as a nation for that. We need to be able to take advantage of this big market that is being created. Africa is the market to target. All nations, big and small, are looking at Africa as the next continent to target. Why? Because first, it is expected to be the fastest growing continent. Currently, we are about 1.2 billion, and we're expected by 2050 to be close to 2.5 billion people. Also, a growing population of young people. We expect that of the 2.5 billion, about 70% will be ages 40 and below. So when we are looking at a market to target, Africa is the market to target. And our leaders realizing that 60% of African trade is with Europe and America. This was a worrying trend. Africa only trades about 15% within its borders. Intra-Africa trade currently stands at 15%. What it means really is that, and if I may just add, when we are trading with the world, Europe and America, obviously that trade is tilted. We are consumers of their products, finished products, and we are exporting to them our raw materials. So the whole import of coming up with one market, one big African market, promoting intra-trade, is to try and promote industries in Africa so that we develop our products primarily for the African market. So we saw the need to develop appropriate strategies for industries to explore opportunities that have been created by this African market. So we're working on this. Like I said, I hope in the next 2 weeks we'll be able to converge and articulate issues that are contained in the African Continental Free Trade Area. There are still issues to do with rules of origin that have been discussed, and we will need your input in these issues because they are still discussed at government level, and we need input from the private sector to put forward your concerns and your recommendations. Another pillar that I want to touch on is on rural industrialization. It's not that I am a member of parliament from a rural constituency that I have this passion, but yes, maybe there is that bias. But I believe that we need to emphasize on inclusive growth. Most of our raw materials in the industry are coming from these rural areas, but we are extracting them raw, processing them in big cities, and there is not much value they are deriving in those communities. If we want to deal decisively with issues of unemployment and issues of rural-urban migration, we need to start developing factories in rural areas so that there is at least some form of value addition of those raw materials. Again, if we are to focus on these factories, we will find that a lot of our products will find their way into local markets, which tailors with our local content strategy. So we are going to be focusing on this in the next 100 days as the ministry, working closely with you, will be developing provincial industrial development policies, which are really derived from our national policy, but we are trying to tailor-make them to suit the provinces on the basis of the natural resources and natural advantages that they have. So we have already started this process, and we hope to complete it in earnest. I think we're left with 60 or 65 days in that regard. There is one pillar on fourth industrial revolution. I think I've taken some notes on this one. I believe that when it comes to retooling, our discussions have not really gone deep enough. If I may ask colleagues here, well, there is a panel coming through, I hope this will be discussed. If we have an idea of our retooling needs, have we done appropriate studies to determine what we need as a nation in terms of retooling, the technologies that we believe we need to acquire, for us to then say we have a 5-year or a 2-year retooling program, which is influenced by that kind of study. So I believe it's important that we take an assessment of our retooling needs, and we inform our financing strategies on the basis of what we would have identified. Retooling, I'll have to go through the notes that I made this morning. I think it's important that I share them with you. Retooling and the need to come up with retooling needs for this sector are quite important. This is an opportunity to attempt at catching up with the rest of the progressive world, particularly in the manufacturing field. Technology is moving at a faster pace than we are able to catch up unless we take bold steps with regards technology adoption, and then only then will this sector realize its full potential. The manufacturing sector generally is a key driver of economic growth in middle-income economies, and our policy envisages a growing contribution of the sector as we progress towards our Vision 2030. Industry 4.0, which is fourth industrial revolution, is upon us. And matter of fact, it is one topic seldom discussed in such high-level platforms. I believe we are missing it completely. Competitiveness is is as important as business survival itself. And looking at the rate, we are embracing advanced industrial technologies, disruptive business models. Artificial intelligence is far less ideal, to say the least. Markets will continue to open up. Now consumers can make purchases anywhere in the world using their cell phones. Markets no longer respect nor conform to geographical limitations. In this regard, it is my hope that we urgently focus on coming up with our National Industrial 4.0 strategy as envisaged in our Z10 IDP, which clearly articulates our retooling needs. This therefore calls for a comprehensive study of our current technologies, corporate plans, and national aspirations. I also commit to work closely with you on this very important task. I have a number of issues to share with you, but when you see the rapporteur attempting to stand next to you, is trying to communicate something. I just wanted to share the few statistics that I have. The 2017-2018 World Economic Forum Global Competitiveness Report ranks Zimbabwe 122 out of 137 in technology readiness, and 122 out of 139 in networked readiness by the 2016 World Economic Forum Global Information Technology Report. This just highlights how far we are and how much work still needs to be done. Suffice to say that we have made huge progress also as government. I remember the President 2 months back launching one of massive projects by Tel1 in Beitbridge, which is also, I believe, one infrastructure we need to begin to take advantage of. So ladies and gentlemen, the pillars we have in our policy try to articulate the aspirations which you gave us as leaders. We also developed strategies. My belief is that without specific strategies, these will remain strategic documents that we will continuously review. So these strategies have to be implemented in earnest. And oftentimes I hear people blaming government for policy implementation. I believe that's a misplaced blame, because for us it's to coordinate. Your inputs come up with policies that we have, and as private sector, you are our implementing horses. Let us continuously work together. If there is anything to do with the policy environment that you want government to do, this ministry and this government will continue to listen. Lastly, I think one of the important pillars which will lead to strategy is one on sector-specific strategies. I believe there are critical sectors which we have not given adequate attention, where we ordinarily have competitive advantage as a nation, and especially in mining and in agriculture. We have what are called rare minerals in this country, and probably with the largest deposits in Africa. I'm told we could be second in the world after China. We have lithium, which is the mineral of the future. We have quite a number of these minerals, but we are not discussing how best to exploit these, what technologies we need for us to be able to fully take advantage of our endowments. We will soon be working on a sugar and ethanol strategy. Again, I believe we have comparative advantage in this. Ethanol is a green fuel, which I believe has potential in the future. And as a nation, we can easily unlock not less than 30,000 hectares to do our sugar plantations. I was discussing this with the Minister of Agriculture. Again, I call upon colleagues here to consider investing in these products of the future. We will be looking also at our pharmaceutical strategy, as well as our beef to leather strategies, which previously we did so well, but today we used to do about 95% of our pharmaceutical needs locally, and would import just about 5%. Currently, I am meant to understand that we are importing 95% and we are only doing about 5% of our needs. Ladies and gentlemen, in trying to conform with my boss here, I will not stretch beyond this. Suffice to say that I really appreciate your coming. I really appreciate you listening to the presentation. And also to say that my belief is that all of us here have what it takes to propel our nation into greater heights. Let's put our hands together. Let's constantly interact. Let's exchange notes. And together we'll make our nation great. Thank you so much for your time.
If we can give another round of applause to the Master of Director of Ceremonies is in charge. When the minister is speaking, I'm not sure whether to stand up or sit down and communicate you. But thank you very much, Minister, for recognizing and keeping our time. We are going to have a small amendment to our program. As the Minister has already indicated, we now have in the House the Minister of Energy and Power Development, Honorable Fortune Chasi, who has agreed, given our current situation, to give a few comments on the energy situation before he runs his next engagement. If I can request you to come and address him.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm deeply honored to be asked to come and address this august meeting. I would like to start by thanking the Minister for the opportunity. I would like to thank the Minister for the opportunity to address this meeting. minister asked me to attend, I was so grateful. I've never been in front of the eminent and rich people such as I'm not going to take time. Perhaps forever squared coming together. Yes. Needless to say that the power situation in the country is dire. Serious. And I don't believe that I should use words that don't describe a particular set of circumstances. It has graduated from being a challenge to a very, very big problem. All of us, regardless of our political affiliation, are subject to load shedding. Even the Minister of Energy, we must share the pain. But the frustrations, sometimes the anger, whether justified or erroneous, should help to galvanize as a nation to come together to resolve this issue. No time for politicking. When you have a debt, you simply must pay. Am I right, you are business people? You must pay. And this is what I would like to make a very impactful appeal to commerce and industry, to say we owe significant amounts of money to CESA, initially denominated in US dollars. Very, very serious situation that we are facing, partly because, and allow me to say this, we're responsible. We are not paying our debts. As business people, as individuals, and so forth, we need to pay what is owed to CESA. When you don't pay your debts, you lose the moral right to criticize CESA, to complain about load shedding like everybody is doing right now. Some of you have given me names. I'm the minister of CESA. My TTT did a video. She was crying. Mama did my name, but I've only been in office for 1.5 months. It's shocking. A lot of you here, and I wrote the list. A lot of you all CESA for years, you haven't been paid. But here, load shedding, hey, my chef, what, without information. I've got information. And if we don't get to a point where we are paid, I'm sorry to say, we'll have to begin to talk directly. And mention names. How embarrassing that will be. How will those who give you loans within and outside Zimbabwe think of you if you do not pay your debts? We must say things as they are. We no longer have a challenge, we have a huge problem. No time for politics. Pay. If you can't pay, make a payment plan. Don't say, yeah, free payment, yeah, the public payments. What is the tariff? How much exactly is CESA collecting from us? I'm going to be looking at that. We need to make sure that this entity, which is so critical for every one of us, and if there's anybody who doesn't understand, I would like them to raise their hand to say, I don't know that CESA is important. I think all of us understand that. When we load shed, we don't ask for party cards. You understand? No. We just go, because now coming back the 24%. But I know all of you, or most of you, are complaining day in, day out. Yes, nobody, even you come out to say, let's pay ZESA. And Minister, I want to appeal to you. By the way, I forgot to recognize you. I want to recognize the honorable minister. His deputy, the minister and the vice president. When you go and ask for your money, it's not I simply say I want my money. Right? That is enough. I want to discourage people from litigation. It will only make one person richer. It's not me. Let's discuss these things and understand that our nation is at a critical point. I've mentioned before that if people don't pay, ZESA is my child, so I speak on their behalf. So I'll say, if you don't pay, I'll switch you off. And people get angry with you. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to keep on giving you power, you can't pay. Is that what you are doing in business? Nothing of the sort. Everyone must pay. Even the Minister of Energy must pay. And you cannot say, Minister of Energy, so let's make sure that my neighbor is more power, I have power, and the next neighbor is not your power. We must share the pain. And as I said, this must galvanize us into a united nation and to ensure that we move forward. Without power, no investment will come. True or false? Nobody will come. So this is an issue that we really must address together. I think that the public is entitled to information on these issues. When people don't have information, they speculate. Isn't it? So today I'll just give you a glimpse. You know about 1.2 billion, I'm sure you do, that's what it says. And if your company was bought anywhere near that, or even a tenth of that, would you be in business? Would you be in business? No, you wouldn't be in business. And yet the reality of the situation that we've got here is us not paying, but expecting power. Like air we are breathing. I don't know if there's somewhere you can choose to have your power, your air. And this is what we're expecting from ZESA, to get power. When sometimes people say, I'm in South Africa when I'm here, because they want to say something about discussions in South Africa. I'll come to that. But it's natural to be anxious. But it's not good enough for you to be anxious as a businessman, a business person, and just expect that things will happen by themselves. Is hope a strategy? It's not. You can't just hope as a business. You must do something practical that's tangible to ensure that your ambitions are achieved. Figures. You want to hear them? Even for your own individual companies? Today I'm not going that far. Because we want to take it step by step. Okay? So it's very important that you may contest these figures. It's up to you. Okay? Talk to ZESA if you're contesting anything. But what is in their books, what is in my books, are the following figures. Mining, I had a meeting with them, they have few on the figure, but I deal with what I have visited. Let's just say 69 million. Industrial, 94 million. Farming, 143 million. Commercial, lighting, 92 million domestic. Do you really want to hear this? Yeah. You are all domestic in your other lives. Okay. This is 257 million. I'll say it again. 257 million. I want this to pay you. I want you to be as frustrated as possible, as long as you don't fight me, and as long as you understand the gravity of the situation at hand. I'm going to disaggregate these figures further. And maybe much later, I will disaggregate them to the level of individuals. Is that good? Yeah. I know what you want, but that's not what I meant. I don't really think this is about names. It's not about names. I suspect that DESA is maybe in excess of 800,000 consumers. Should I bring that list here? Towards what end? Pay the bills. Let's pay the bills. Let's make this very critical entity solvent. We are the authors of its insolvency. I've made that point to government and the treasury. Let's pay it. I've also made it clear that power is a very expensive resource, largely sounding in foreign currency. The tariff is suboptimal. I'll talk about that later. So we cannot just use power as if it's coming on trees. Somebody in parliament said, hey, don't worry about the demand side, just deal with supply. What philosophy? I don't understand this. Some people ululated, but I just said, I don't understand this. And you, as president, I want to ask you a direct question. Is that a proper philosophy? Is it that side? Is it this side? Pakati? So we've got to generate more power. We've got to hedge against the risk that is evident at Kariba. We need a good mix of sources of power, but we also need to manage the demand side. How we expand. And our solutions are not going to take the business as usual approach. We are going to disrupt what is there. We are installing meters in government buildings. Have we done that before? No. It has happened in the Ministry of Energy. And I've asked ZESA to give me a rollout plan for all government departments. And I say we were accountable to the expenditure of power. Lights, all 24 hours, they're still down. Okay, anyway. Governance of the sector, very critical. I would like a buy-in from you. Is power very important for you? It's obvious. Isn't it? If it was a department in your company, you would have it manned by a very experienced person who would assure you of power, isn't it? So I would like board members from here to go and say support. Can I say nonsense? No. Or I should put my friends and relatives and everything else. You must take an active interest in the government success as commerce and industry, because it has a direct bearing on business continuity for yourselves. So you can't be aloof and say, it's going to be sorted out by somebody. It's going to be in there. And I would like us to have proper governance, because everything rises or falls on governance. And so can you allow me a few minutes? Because these people are not sitting. I'll not be like you and take forever that. I know it is meeting, but he invited me. It's he who invited me. So let's take one of the critical footprints that we we must achieve is to ensure that we properly run the power sector, energy sector. Very, very important. All of us know the problems that they are facing in the past. My instructions are to deal with them, and I'm dealing with them. I started already. No time for nonsense, no time for crooked deals or anything of that sort, or connections in order to make money, or inflation of procurement items and so forth for the personal benefit. That is history. We want a properly run entity and listen very carefully, with women and men of integrity and experience. By the way, the order of women and men is very deliberate. I didn't hear what you said. We will comply with the constitutional dictates on the composition of public entities in terms of governance. 50-50, I expect women of integrity and experience to be part of the board. We are working on this, but it must be representative as contemplated by the law. So we need to solarize. A lot of you are suffering, I know that. Many of you will come to my office to complain, others send messages. I don't know who is dishing out my number. Who is it? Everywhere. Even somebody in Tanzania sent me a message last night. They called me on WhatsApp. But it's okay, I'm cool with it. That's why But I can see some young people here. It's dope and lit. I just want to give you an idea. I just want to give you an idea of who is owing what in a global sense. Right? In a global sense. Local authorities, 358, making 359 million. I'm going to talk about each one of them and say who owes what. Because it's time that we begin to sort out this issue. And today is a turning point. Government, 75%? No, 2%, then they paid. I spoke to the minister. He paid, overpaid. I'm delighted. Para State House, I'm coming there. You owe me 43 million and I want it. I want that money to go to CESA. International creditors to pay. How do I pay them if you're not paying? I want that money. I think I face a bastard. I spoke about mining, industrial intervention, and industrial that's 95 million, 9%. Farming, 143, 13%. Commercial lines, 8%. Domestic, 24%. Okay. So I just think that's very important that we are aware of these figures and that we begin to do something really practical about paying our debts. I have all the information about who owes what. Standing up again. Right, this is the last one. This is the last one. Really the last one. Very important. Spiritual strategy is over saying there. It's not coming and I'm we must pay. If we don't pay, and even if I don't switch you off, the system will just switch you off because there will be no power. Am I right or wrong? Yeah. That's the reality. So don't complain that what, chakazo. Right, the city of Harare, 145. Bulawayo, I know they are called with CESA, but on the books, 112, 112. Gweru, 28. Kwekwe, 18. Kadoma, 10. Chinoi, 7. Shawale, 5. Victoria Falls, 5. Kariba 4. Kwacho Nova Magezi. Marondera 3. Cheguchu 3. Tare 2. 2.4. Shirube 1.3. Chitubiza 1.2. Chipinge 1. Usabe 837. Bindura 789. Others 4. So I think I have given you some information, an idea of what the situation is on the ground. I would like to appeal to you to consider wind solar. It's a good thing to do. Wind energies are the way to go, but it also liberate you. If you are able to yes, for your land payments, you can have your own grid. You will do whatever it takes to facilitate that. I've just done it myself. I'm now 3 days or so. I'm so happy. Well, it's not that I'm being threatened here. On. But I want to conclude by saying that this is a very serious subject matter. And I would like, Minister, hopefully, when the meeting ends, a commitment for tourism industry that they pay. But not just a commitment. Megawatts are neither made in court or on commitments. They're made out of money, very useful. I'm going to leave this burden for my colleague to discuss with you. But I would like a plan. I know there are these funny plans. I've seen them in CESA that some of you have made, which don't really make much. I think out of it, 1.2 billion, they've collected something like 55 million. It's nothing. Thank you, sir, and I'm sorry.